So yeah, it's not even just with Pal Action. So obviously we've seen recently with Pal Action, they've prescribed them as a terrorist group, but then we've seen the High Court say that that prescription was unlawful. Even after that, the police are still insistent on arresting people that do show support for Pal Action. This was, for me, this is the very start of it. You know, this was the very start of the clampdown on our right to protest. Now we're seeing, you know, countries like Germany abuse peaceful protesters.
Good evening and welcome. Ireland has long stood as one of the most vocal voices in Europe for Palestinian rights, a nation that knows from its own history what occupation, dispossession and resistance mean. Today we are joined by a man who embodies that solidarity. Damien Quinn is an Irish human rights activist, prominent voice within the Ireland Palestine Solidarity Campaign, and a passionate advocate who has decided years of his life to bearing witness to Palestinian suffering and amplifying it on the world stage. He has marched, spoken, organized, and refused to be silent at a time when silence is complicity. Damien, most welcome to the program. Damien, you must be following up the news as the Israeli occupation forces attacked the flotilla of Gaza and they detained hundreds of the activists. So how that has impact on Ireland, and how do you feel about that yourself, Damien?
Yeah, of course. You know, with Ireland we have, you know, quite a wide support for the Palestinian people and Palestine. You know, just looking at our own history of oppression and occupation. So, you know, we feel like it's very close to home when we see the crimes being committed to the Palestinian people. You know, this is the second big flotilla that's left within the last 7 months. It's absolutely heartbreaking, to be honest with you, to see so many, you know, humanitarians and activists across the globe being kidnapped off international waters illegally by the terrorist state of Israel. So it's very uncomforting. You know, these people are just trying to get to Gaza to feed starving people, but yet they're treated like terrorists by the terrorist regime of Israel. So yeah, it's you know, there's a lot of worried people in Ireland today, especially those that have family members that are on those ships. Over 17 people from Ireland, making it 42 people from Ireland being kidnapped in international waters within the last 7 months over the two flotillas.
Yeah, and Damien, we saw the images coming from the Israeli detention centers, very shocking images, as the activists are shackled and handcuffed, and they are forced to kneel down with their faces pressed against the floor. And the Israeli Minister of Home Security, Itamar Ben-Gvir, boasting and bragging about that, reprimanding them. So how this image is received by the people in Europe and the world from your perspective?
Well, it's very scary. You know, everyone here knows how evil Ben-Gvir is. You know, we know that he's the leading the Palestinian hostages and wanting the kill Palestinian hostages, the death penalty. So we know that he's leading that. We know that he's a very dangerous, evil man. So to see, you know, activists that I'm close to and activists from across the world being even within the same room as Ben-Gvir, that's scary. That's frightening enough. You know, Ben-Gvir is not something that you want to be anywhere close to. So yeah, it's very scary. It's very scary, like I said, for all the family to see their loved ones being so close to Ben-Gvir and really being treated like garbage. You know, they're over there to feed the starving people, but yet Ben-Gvir is parading them around, you know, insulting them, saying that they're here as heroes, but then showing the camera to them all sitting on the floor, you know, restrained. This isn't the way to treat humanitarians. These humanitarians had no weapons. All they had was food and aid to bring to the people of Gaza. So to treat them like this, it's no real surprise. You know, we've seen Israel's crimes for the last 70 odd years, but within the last 2 years, especially how brutal the Israeli state is. So it is worrying. You don't know how they're going to be treated. We've seen Palestinians be abused. We've seen Palestinians coming out of Israeli dungeons, and how their faces have changed, how their bodies change. They've lost so much weight. So there's no real limit to what Israel will do, and just because they're humanitarians from across the world, it doesn't give us much comfort that they'll be treated well, because we know from previous flotillas how some came off abused and beaten by the Israelis, that the same thing could happen to the flotilla participants right now. So it's a very worrying thing, and people are sending emails to their governments and their politicians to get them to do as much as they can to protect the activists from Ireland, but of course the activists from all across the globe.
Yeah, and among the activists detained is Margaret Connolly, the sister of the president of Ireland. How this affects the attitude of the government in Ireland, and if there is any diplomatic move in protest of the Israeli abduction of Dr. Margaret?
To be perfectly honest, I would say it's going to be very little. Catherine Connolly is the president of Ireland, is very supportive of Palestine. She's came out and demanded that sanctions be put on Israel, the passing of the OTB. So she's came out and she's been very vocal with that. Unfortunately, within the government of Ireland, the government is still supporting Israel. They still have not enacted sanctions. They're still allowing US military in our ports. They're basically doing nothing but words to support the Palestinian people. They may say that they're deep concerned, but from that, no actions taken. We've seen over previous flotillas that the Irish government did very little. So, even though that there is the sister of the current president of Ireland, the government is not only not listening to its people, but not listening to humanitarian organizations and the ICJ and the ICC. They're just not listening. They're falling into this same familiarity with other Western nations in doing very little, just words, but nothing more than that, no actions. So you would imagine that in any country, the sister of a president being kidnapped, abducted off off international waters would spur the government to take a very active role and a very sincere role. But I just don't see that happening with the current Irish government right now. Today, for example, there's going to be a vote to sanction Israel within the Irish government. So that's going to happen today. But I'd be very, very surprised if that passes, because the two ruling government, or the two parties that are ruling the government, along with the independents, are continuing to support Israel, continuing to do very little in terms of their legal obligations and what they have to do under international and humanitarian law.
Yeah, now the Palestinians have lived through 78 years of international statements, but no one statement did translate into action. But we can't much hope as Palestinians in the public opinion and people like you. So if you tell us how this flotilla incident gives momentum to other activities being organized in Ireland and other parts of Europe, including the BDS. If you tell us about the situation of the BDS movement these days and how it's going over there.
Sorry, I couldn't really hear you there. Can you just repeat the last bit?
Yeah, the flotilla incident and the Israeli occupation detention of more than 240 activists, this gives momentum to other activities against the colonial policy, the apartheid policy. If you tell me about how this affects the BDS movement in Ireland and other parts of Europe and your activities these days as BDS movement.
Yeah, so what you see with the flotilla participants is them risking their lives, basically, putting themselves in danger to go and support and to bring aid to the people in Gaza. So that should really speak to everybody. If people are prepared to go and risk their lives, risk their careers, risk everything to go on the Smud Flotilla, then what is everyone else doing? So that's where, we take a very active role here in Ireland. I'm part of the BDS movement. I'm part of BDS Belfast here in Ireland. And what we try to do is we try to inspire people to replicate our actions. So we partake in direct action. We go into stores. We call out complicity wherever we see it. And from that, we want to help educate people, tell them what is actually happening in Palestine and how the complicity affects us all. It's not just Israel and what they're doing within Palestine. Our governments are supporting the genocide, so we're tax-paying people, so that therefore makes us complicit. And in the companies that we spend in every single day, there's complicity there. Just down the road from where I live, there's a store selling Israeli products. So with BDS Belfast and the activists within Ireland, we take that complicity and we take it head on. We call it out wherever we see it. We go into the stores. We physically remove the products. We go in and we disrupt conferences like the Google conference, as well as any other places that we see complicity. For example, in Barclays Bank that invests in war companies that are creating the weapons that are then dropped on Palestinians, the bombs that are dropped on Palestinians and the weapons that kill the Palestinian people every single day. So using that Smud Flotilla, understanding that, there's people that are trying their very best to do what they can for Palestine. If anyone's out there not doing anything in solidarity with Palestine, then try to use that, try to look at that, try to understand that that is what's happening here is horrendous. It's very scary. It's scary for us all. It's not just freeing Palestine, it's freeing us too. We're seeing a rise of fascism all across the globe, and we're seeing a rise of racism because Israel as a racist entity is given the confidence to racist groups all over the globe. So it's never a situation where, oh, that's got nothing to do with me. Everyone's got to do with it. From that levels of complicity, what you can do as a person to put pressure on your government to sanction Israel, and what you do to educate your family and friends of which companies and institutions are complicit in that genocide and in the apartheid of the Palestinian people, and playing a part, doing as much as you can, not just knowing that it's happening, but actually doing something about it, taking action, taking direct action, speaking up, sending emails, lobbying your politicians, taking every action that you can. So using that flotilla to inspire people as well. So we seen yesterday in Dublin there was some protests because of the interception of the flotilla, and I'm sure we'll see many more of those within the next week or so to put as much pressure as possible. Not only on the governments to support the activists and to make sure that they're, that they come back safe and sound, but also to put pressure on the governments that are complicit in the genocide to make sure that they pull their support out of Israel and any company that's supportive in that. So that's why, when it comes to the BDS movement, we're very active and it's Palestinian led. So, who better to listen to, who better to take direction from than the people that are going through this horror themselves.
Yeah, and my final question to you, Damien, many Western governments, including the British government, took many actions against the activists who protest against the Israeli occupation crimes against the Palestinians. And we saw what's happening with Palestine Action activists. They appeared before the court. Some of them were punished by the British police and the British government. So how do you see the impact of this policy on the solidarity movement and on the activists of the BDS?
So yeah, it's not even just with Pal Action. So obviously we've seen recently with Pal Action, they've prescribed them as a terrorist group, but then we've seen the High Court say that prescription was unlawful. Even after that, the police are still insistent on arresting people that do show support for Pal Action. This is the very start of it. This was the very start of the clampdown on our right to protest. Now we're seeing, countries like Germany abuse peaceful protesters. We've seen it all across the world, even in Ireland there. On Saturday, police were very violent in pulling activists away from trying to get in to one of the government's Ardèches, so one of their yearly conferences. Activists wanted to call out their complicity, call out their inaction, and their inaction to uphold international law. And instead of listening to the pleas of the Irish people and of the wide majority of Irish people that want to sanction Israel, the police resorted to violence, pulling people away, throwing people on the floor. We're even seeing it up here in Belfast. 6 activists last year stood on roads to protest the starvation of the Palestinian people. We see in August last year that famine was declared for the first time ever in Gaza. So we had every right to be on those roads, but yet the police service are trying to criminalise us for that. So next week we have court cases to go up on because of those protests. It's not going to stop us. It's actually just emboldening us. It's making us more it's giving us more energy to go out and protest, because we're seeing it all over the place. This isn't going to stop. The governments are doing nothing about it. It's not going to stop. And what it takes is people power. It takes mass movement. It takes people joining with other groups and educating each other, inspiring each other to do as much as we possibly can. So the crackdown from the government, they may think it's deterring activists and people from standing with the Palestinian people and standing against genocide. But it's not going to work. We know that we're standing on the right side of history. We're standing with Palestine. As Francesca Albanese said last year, what are we fearing? Do as much as you possibly can, because humanitarian international law is being broken. It is being documented, and all those that are complicit in these horrors will be brought to justice one way or another. So we want to try and speed up that process, try to get those criminals that have been instigating and supporting and funding the genocide of the Palestinian people. And we believe the best way to do that is through direct action, through getting engaged within the BDS movement and taking as much action as you possibly can to put the pressure on the governments, the institutions, and the companies that are spending money and funding the Israeli genocide of the Palestinian people. That is not the impunity of Israel. We've seen it. We've seen the genocide of the Palestinian people, but now we've seen the genocidal attacks be replicated in Lebanon, as well as the illegal war of aggression with the US on Iran. So that should scream out to everyone that we have to do as much as we possibly can, because things will get worse. They won't get better by sitting doing nothing. We have to hold our governments accountable and those companies and institutions that are complicit.
Damian Quinn, it has been a great pleasure having you on our program. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Shalom Palestine.
Thank you. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for watching. And from you, Sam Nazal, have a nice time.